The mountains don't care who you are. They don't care about your plans, your family waiting at home, or the fact that you told someone you'd be back by Sunday. In 2011, 36-year-old Rebecca Hale learned that lesson in the worst way possible. She vanished without a trace on Utah's Devil's Ridge Trail, a serpentine maze of red rock canyons where even experienced hikers lose their bearings. But here's the thing that still sends shivers down the spines of search and rescue teams, the thing that turned this from a tragic disappearance into something far darker. When they finally found Rebecca 5 years later, there was a note pinned to her chest. 4 words that changed everything. You stopped looking soon. Not a cry for help. Not a suicide note. A message from someone who wanted to make absolutely sure we knew this was intentional. Someone who enjoyed watching a community tear itself apart, searching for answers that were hidden in plain sight the entire time. Rebecca wasn't just lost. She was taken. And whoever did it wanted credit for their work. They wanted us to know they'd won. That kind of arrogance, that kind of cruelty, it doesn't just happen. It's cultivated. And the man responsible had been cultivating it for years, right under everyone's noses, wearing the smile of someone you'd trust with your life. Let me take you back to where it started. March 2011. Rebecca Hale was what people called a weekend warrior. She had a decent job as a paralegal in Salt Lake City, a small apartment she kept meticulously clean, and exactly one passion that made her feel alive. Hiking. Not the casual trail walking kind. The real deal. Multi-day treks through terrain that could kill you if you made one wrong turn. Her friends thought she was crazy. Her sister Maria begged her to at least hike with a group. But Rebecca had this thing about solitude. She said it was the only time her mind went quiet. The only time she felt like herself. So when she told Maria she was planning a 4-day solo trek through Devil's Ridge, Maria wasn't surprised. Worried but not surprised. They had coffee the morning before Rebecca left. Maria still remembers what Rebecca wore. A faded university sweatshirt and hiking boots so broken and they looked like slippers. She remembers Rebecca laughing about something stupid, probably a joke Maria told to ease her own anxiety. And she remembers the last thing Rebecca said before walking out the door. If I'm not back by Monday night, send the cute ranger to find me. It was supposed to be funny. It wasn't. Monday came and went. No Rebecca. Maria called the ranger station Tuesday morning, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. They told her not to worry yet. Experienced hikers sometimes extend their trips. Lose track of time. But by Wednesday, when Rebecca still hadn't checked in and wasn't answering her emergency radio, they launched a search. What they found at her last known campsite made the lead ranger's stomach drop. Her tent was still there. Partially collapsed from wind, but there. Her sleeping bag lay half out of the tent like she'd crawled out in a hurry. Her pack sat 10 feet away, contents spilled across the dirt. Protein bars, a first aid kit, spare socks. But here's what wasn't there. Her water bottles. Her knife. And her radio. The one she'd used 2 days earlier to check in with the ranger station, her voice calm and clear. Day 2. Weather's holding. Making good time. Then, 6 hours later, a second transmission. Barely audible through static. Someone's following me. That was it. 4 words that would haunt Maria for 5 years. 4 words that launched one of the largest search operations in Utah history. They brought in dogs. Helicopters. Volunteer teams combing every inch of those canyons. They found boot prints leading away from her campsite, Rebecca's size, heading deeper into the maze. Then the prints just stopped. Not faded. Not lost in rockier terrain. They stopped. Like she'd evaporated. The search went on for 3 weeks. Then scaled back. Then, after 2 months, it became a recovery operation. By summer it was a cold case. The presumption was that Rebecca had fallen, maybe into one of the many crevasses hidden by brush, or that she'd gotten disoriented and succumbed to exposure. Tragic but not unheard of. People die in the wilderness every year. Maria never accepted it. She kept Rebecca's apartment exactly as it was. Paid the rent for 8 months before her savings ran out. She printed flyers and posted them in every hiking store, every ranger station within 200 miles. She called the detective assigned to the case, a tired-sounding woman named Cassidy Vega, every single week. Anything new? No, Maria. I'm sorry. Every week. The same answer. The case went cold in every sense of the word. But here's the thing about cases like this, the thing that keeps detectives like Cassidy awake at night. There's always something that doesn't fit. Some detail that nags at you. For Cassidy, it was the radio message. Someone's following me. Not, I think someone's following me. Not, I heard something. Definite. Present tense. Someone was following Rebecca Hale through those canyons and she knew it. The question was why. And the even bigger question, the one that made Cassidy's skin crawl every time she thought about it, was what happened after that message cut out. Now, if you're the kind of person who believes that people like Rebecca deserve justice, that families like Maria's deserve answers, and you can't stand the idea of someone getting away with this kind of evil, hit that subscribe button right now. Only the kind of person who thinks this is okay, the kind who sides with predators and cowards, won't subscribe. Don't be that person. 5 years is a long time to carry hope. Long enough for Maria to finally box up Rebecca's things. Long enough for Cassidy Vega to move on to other cases, other missing persons, other families waiting by phones that never ring. Long enough for Devil's Ridge Trail to go back to being just another beautiful, dangerous place where hikers test themselves against nature. Long enough for almost everyone to forget about Rebecca Hale. Almost everyone. April 2016. 2 college kids from Arizona, Tyler Chen and his girlfriend Brooke, decided to go off-trail. Stupid decision. The kind rangers warn against every single day. But Tyler wanted to impress Brooke, find some hidden spot nobody else knew about, get some photos for his outdoor adventure blog that had maybe 30 followers. They scrambled down a narrow ravine, stepping carefully over loose rocks when Brooke stopped. "You smell that?" Tyler laughed it off, told her it was probably a dead animal. Coyote. Maybe a deer. But Brooke wouldn't move. The smell was wrong. Too strong. And there was something else. A flash of color that didn't belong. Faded fabric wedged between 2 large sandstone slabs, almost completely hidden unless you were standing at exactly the right angle. Tyler climbed closer. Then he saw it. A human hand. Skeletal. Still wearing a watch. He actually screamed. Brooke called 911 with shaking fingers, and within 2 hours the ravine was swarming with county sheriff deputies, forensic techs, and one detective who'd driven 90 minutes the second she heard the location. Cassidy Vega. She stood at the edge of the ravine, watching the techs carefully extract what was left of the body, and she knew. Even before they found the ID. Even before they confirmed it. She knew it was Rebecca. The clothing matched what Maria had described. The watch matched. And the location, just 3 miles from where Rebecca's campsite had been found, fit perfectly with the direction those boot prints had been heading. But none of that was what made Cassidy's hands shake as she pulled on latex gloves and climbed down for a closer look. It was the note. Pinned directly to the remains of Rebecca's jacket, right over her chest with a rusted safety pin. The paper had weathered 5 years of desert elements, faded and brittle, but the words written in thick black marker were still legible. "You stopped looking too soon." Cassidy read it 3 times. Felt the anger rise hot in her throat. This wasn't a victim's final message. This was a taunt. Whoever killed Rebecca Hale had staged this. Left her body in a location just hard enough to find that it would take years, but not so hidden it would never surface. They wanted her found. Eventually, on their timeline, was a game. And they were telling Cassidy and everyone else that they'd won. The medical examiner's initial assessment came back within a week. Cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. Severe enough to be instantly fatal. The angle suggested she'd been struck from behind. Not a fall. Not an accident. Murder. Premeditated. Calculated. The kind where someone gets close enough to be trusted. The note went to the forensics lab. No usable fingerprints after 5 years of exposure, but they found something else. Faint markings along the edges. Coordinates. And symbols. Tiny, deliberately drawn symbols that meant nothing to most people but everything to someone who knew what they were looking at. Cassidy brought in a specialist. Dr. Raymond Kath, a retired anthropology professor who'd consulted on cases involving ritualistic elements. He studied the symbols for maybe 10 seconds before his face went pale. These are trail markers. Old ones. Used by wilderness guides in the 70s and 80s before GPS. Each guide had their own system. This particular set, I've only seen it once before. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through files, and showed Cassidy a photo. A wooden sign outside a rustic cabin. Canyon Soul Expeditions. Run by a guy named Garrett Boone. That name meant nothing to Cassidy. Not yet. But it would. She ran Garrett Boone through every database she had access to. What came back was a portrait of someone who seemed, on the surface, completely normal. 41 years old in 2011. Experienced wilderness guide. Ran a small but well-reviewed tour company specializing in multi-day canyon treks. Glowing testimonials from clients. No criminal record. Not even a speeding ticket. But when Cassidy dug deeper, cracks started showing. Canyon Soul Expeditions had shut down abruptly in late 2011. No explanation. No forwarding information. Garrett had just vanished from the hiking community. His social media went dark. His business license expired. It was like he'd evaporated. And the timing. March 2011. Right when Rebecca disappeared. Cassidy pulled phone records. It took 3 days and 2 court orders, but she finally got them. Rebecca's cell records from the weeks before her hike. And there it was. 6 calls to a number registered to Canyon Soul Expeditions. The last one made 2 days before she left for Devil's Ridge. Rebecca had contacted Garrett. Cassidy's mind raced. Had Rebecca hired him as a guide? Was she taking lessons? She called Maria. Did Rebecca ever mention taking a class or hiring a guide before her solo hike? Maria thought for a moment. Actually, yeah. She said she wanted to brush up on her navigation skills. Took a weekend course a few weeks before she left. I remember because she came back so excited. Said the instructor really understood her love for solitude. Do you remember his name? No. But she showed me a photo. Nice-looking guy. Big smile. She joked that if he wasn't her teacher, she might have asked him out. Cassidy felt ice slide down her spine. She pulled up the DMV photo of Garrett Boone. Sent it to Maria. The response came in less than a minute. That's him. Now listen carefully. If you're someone who believes that predators like Garrett, people who manipulate trust and use it as a weapon, deserve to be exposed and stopped, you need to comment, "Justice for Rebecca," right now. If you stay silent, you're letting people like him win. Don't let him win. Cassidy drove out to the last known address for Canyon Soul Expeditions the next morning. It was a 40-minute drive into the kind of nowhere that makes your GPS give up. The cabin sat at the end of a dirt road, tucked against a rock face, surrounded by juniper trees and silence. It looked abandoned. Windows dark. Porch sagging. But when Cassidy tried the door, it swung open. Unlocked. She called for backup before going in, but she didn't wait. Something told her that every minute mattered. The inside of the cabin smelled like dust and time. Old furniture covered in sheets. A wood stove cold for years. But the back room, the one with a padlock on the outside that Cassidy had to cut through, that room told a different story. The walls were covered in photographs. Dozens of them. Maybe 100. All hikers. All women. Young, middle-aged, fit, experienced. Each photo had a red circle drawn around the face. And beneath each photo, a handwritten note. Too cautious. Gave up too easy. Boring. But one photo, positioned in the center like a trophy, had different words beneath it. Rebecca Hale. Smiling in hiking gear, mountains behind her. And underneath, in Garrett's handwriting, Lesson 1. Perfect. Cassidy felt her stomach turn. This wasn't just obsession. It was selection. Garrett had been evaluating women. Testing them. And Rebecca had been chosen for something. Around the room, Cassidy found more. Journals filled with meticulous notes. Dates. Times. Observations about clients. Their habits. Their fears. How they reacted under stress. One entry from February 2011 made Cassidy's hands shake. Rebecca doesn't trust easily but wants to. Mentioned she hikes alone because people disappoint her. Said the mountains are the only place she feels safe. Ironic. She has no idea that safety is just another illusion I can take away whenever I choose. He'd been planning it. Studying her. And Rebecca had walked right into it, thinking she'd found someone who understood her passion. The coordinates from the note led Cassidy and a team of deputies deeper into Devil's Ridge, to a place most hikers never reached. An old ranger station, abandoned since the 90s, hidden in a canyon so narrow you'd miss it if you didn't know it was there. Inside they found camping gear. Supplies. A generator. Garrett had been living out here. Maybe not full-time but regularly. And in a metal footlocker they found recordings. Mini cassette tapes labeled with dates. Cassidy's hands trembled as she loaded the first one into an old player they'd found. Static. Then Garrett's voice. Come. Almost cheerful. March 19, 2011. Day 1 of the Rebecca Project. She doesn't know I'm following her. Stayed about a mile back all day. She's good. Better than most. Efficient movements. Minimal wasted energy. But she made one mistake. She trusts the trail. Thinks if she follows the markers she'll be safe. Doesn't realize I placed new markers 2 days ago. Ones that lead exactly where I want her to go. Cassidy's blood went cold. He'd sabotaged the trail. Led Rebecca away from safety, deeper into the maze, while she thought she was following legitimate markers. The second tape was worse. Day 2. She's starting to realize something's wrong. Radioed the ranger station. Said someone's following her. Smart girl. But not smart enough. She still doesn't understand that I'm not just following. I'm hurting. By tonight she'll be exactly where I need her. And then we'll see if all that confidence holds up when the mountains she loves so much become her prison. Cassidy stopped the tape. She couldn't listen anymore. Not yet. But she had to know. She fast-forwarded to the last recording. Dated March 21, 2011. Garrett's voice had changed. Excited. Almost giddy. She fought. God, she actually fought. I didn't expect that. Most of them freeze. But Rebecca, she tried to run. Even grabbed a rock, swung at me. Caught my shoulder. It's going to bruise. I'll wear it like a badge. But here's the thing she didn't understand. You can't outrun someone who knows every inch of this canyon. Someone who's been preparing for this for months. I cornered her at the ravine edge. And I asked her, do you understand now? Do you see that all your skills, all your preparation meant nothing? That I was always in control? She spat at me. Called me a coward. So I showed her what happens to people who don't learn their lessons. The tape went silent except for wind and the sound of Garrett breathing. Then, I left her where no one would think to look. But I left a note too. Because eventually someone will find her. Maybe a year. Maybe 10. And when they do, I want them to know. I want them to understand that every day they searched in the wrong places, every press conference, every tearful interview with her sister, I was watching. Laughing. Because you all stopped looking too soon. Just like the note says. The tape ended. Cassidy sat in that abandoned ranger station, surrounded by deputies who looked as sick as she felt, and she made a promise. Garrett Boone would not win. He thought he was untouchable. Thought he'd disappeared so completely that he'd gotten away with it. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd kept trophies. Documented everything. And now Cassidy had it all. She issued a warrant for Garrett's arrest within the hour. His photo went out to every law enforcement agency in the western United States. FBI got involved. This wasn't just murder anymore. The journals suggested other potential victims. Women who'd taken his courses and then disappeared on solo hikes over the years. Different states. Different jurisdictions. But the same pattern. The media exploded. Rebecca's story was everywhere. Her photo. The note. And Garrett's face, plastered across every news channel with the words, armed and dangerous, beneath it. Maria saw the news at work. She had to sit down. 5 years of not knowing, and now this. Now she knew her sister had died terrified, betrayed by someone she trusted. But she also knew something else. Rebecca had fought. Had refused to give Garrett the satisfaction of her fear. And that mattered. That meant everything. If you're someone who refuses to let monsters like Garrett Boone hide in the shadows, someone who believes that evil should be dragged into the light no matter how long it takes, hit that like button right now. Because staying silent is exactly what people like him count on. Don't give him that power. The manhunt for Garrett Boone became one of the most intense searches in recent memory. Tips flooded in from across the country. Sightings in Nevada, Colorado. Even one from someone who swore they saw him at a gas station in Oregon. But every lead went nowhere. Garrett knew how to disappear. He'd spent decades learning wilderness survival, how to move through terrain without leaving traces, how to become invisible. It was the same skill set he'd used to stalk Rebecca. Now he was using it to evade justice. Cassidy worked 18-hour days. She coordinated with federal agents, interviewed every person who'd ever taken one of Garrett's courses, and slowly pieced together a profile of a man who'd hidden his true nature behind a facade of rugged charm and outdoor expertise. Former clients described him as intense but knowledgeable. A few mentioned that he had strong opinions about weakness, about how modern people had gone soft and needed to be tested by nature. One woman, Angela Torres, told Cassidy something that made the hairs on her neck stand up. She'd taken a 3-day course with Garrett in 2009. On the last day, They'd gotten separated from the group during a navigation exercise. Angela said Garrett had appeared out of nowhere, startling her. He told me I'd failed the test. That if this had been a real survival situation, I'd be dead. He wasn't being instructive. He was angry. Like I'd personally offended him by getting lost. Then he just walked away and left me there. I had to find my own way back to camp. Took me 4 hours. When I reported it to the tour company he was contracted with, they dismissed it. Said tough love was part of his teaching style. Angela's voice cracked. When I saw Rebecca's story, I realized he hadn't been teaching me. He'd been deciding if I was worth hunting. Cassidy documented everything, built a timeline, and discovered something that made the case even darker. Over a 7-year period, 5 women who'd taken courses or hired Garrett as a guide had later disappeared during solo hikes. 5 different states, different years, spread out enough that no one had connected them. But now, with Garrett's journals and the pattern emerging, it was impossible to ignore. He hadn't just killed Rebecca. She was his masterpiece, maybe the one he'd documented so carefully. But she wasn't his first. The FBI opened investigations into each disappearance. And Cassidy kept hunting. 3 weeks into the manhunt, they got a break. A park ranger in southern Utah reported finding a campsite that had been abandoned in a hurry. Fresh supplies. A sleeping bag still laid out. And most importantly, a backpack containing a driver's license. Not Garrett's. The license belonged to a woman named Claire something, reported missing 2 weeks earlier after she'd gone on a solo camping trip and never returned. Cassidy's heart sank. He was doing it again. Right now. While they were chasing ghosts, Garrett had found another victim. The search for Claire became desperate. Every available resource poured into the area. Helicopters, search dogs, volunteer teams. And this time they had an advantage. They knew Garrett's patterns. Knew how he thought. Cassidy studied the terrain, compared it to where he'd taken Rebecca, and made an educated guess. There was a canyon system about 6 miles northeast of where Claire's car had been found. Remote. Difficult to access. The kind of place Garrett loved. She led a small team in on foot, moving quietly, hoping that if Garrett was there, they could surprise him. They hiked for 3 hours. The sun was starting to set when they heard it. Voices. Cassidy signaled for silence. They crept closer, using the canyon walls for cover. And there, in a small clearing beside a dried creek bed, they saw him. Garrett Boone looked exactly like his photos. Weathered. He was crouched beside a fire, talking to someone. A woman sat across from him, hands zip-tied in front of her, terror written across her face. Claire. She was alive. Cassidy's training kicked in. She radioed for backup, then positioned her team. They had to move carefully. Garrett was unpredictable, dangerous, and Claire was too close to him. But they didn't have a choice. Waiting meant risking Claire's life. Cassidy stepped out from behind the rocks, weapon drawn. Garrett Boone. Police. Put your hands where I can see them. For a moment, everything froze. Garrett looked up, and he smiled. Not the reaction Cassidy expected. He stood slowly, hands rising, but that smile never left his face. Detective Vega. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. On your knees. Now. Garrett complied, still smiling. You know what's funny? I almost made it easy for you. Almost left the coordinates somewhere more obvious. But where's the fun in that? The chase is the whole point. Cassidy moved closer, her team flanking. One of the deputies cut Claire's zip ties and pulled her to safety. She was sobbing, shaking, but alive. You're done, Garrett. He laughed. Actually laughed. Am I? You think finding me is winning? Rebecca's still dead. So are the others. And I got years of watching all of you stumble around in the dark, pretending you were close. Do you know how many times I was within a mile of a search team? How many press conferences I watched, seeing her sister beg for answers I could have given any time I wanted? Cassidy felt rage boil up, but she kept her voice steady. You're going to prison for the rest of your life. Maybe. But I'll be famous. People will study me. Write books about me. I'll be remembered. Rebecca? She's just another victim. Another cautionary tale about women hiking alone. That was it. The thing that made Cassidy snap. She closed the distance, got right in his face. You're wrong. Rebecca fought you. She saw exactly what you were and she fought. And because of her, because of what you did to her, we found your journals. Your recordings. Every sick thought you ever had. And now we're going to find every victim. Give every family answers. Your legacy isn't going to be fear. It's going to be failure. You lost. For the first time, Garrett's smile faltered. Just for a second. But Cassidy saw it. She'd gotten to him. The backup arrived within 20 minutes. Garrett was arrested, read his rights, and taken into custody. Claire was airlifted to a hospital. Traumatized but physically unharmed. She'd been missing for 16 days. Garrett had been toying with her, moving her from location to location, playing his twisted game. But this time he didn't get to finish. The news spread fast. Garrett Boone captured. Another victim saved. And the investigation into his other crimes just beginning. Maria heard the news and collapsed in her kitchen, sobbing. Not from sadness. From relief. It was over. The man who killed her sister was in custody. It didn't bring Rebecca back. Nothing ever would. But it meant something. It meant he couldn't hurt anyone else. If you're someone who stands against predators like Garrett Boone, someone who believes that no matter how long it takes, justice should always win, then comment, "We stand with Rebecca" right now. Because silence protects monsters. Your voice matters. Use it. Garrett Boone's trial began 8 months later. The prosecution had built an airtight case. The journals. The recordings. The physical evidence from Rebecca's body and the note. Testimony from Claire, who'd survived to tell her story. And forensic evidence linking Garrett to at least 3 of the other missing women. He sat in that courtroom every day looking bored. Like the whole thing was beneath him. His defense attorney tried to argue diminished capacity, childhood trauma, anything to avoid a death penalty verdict. But the jury saw through it. They heard Garrett's voice on those tapes, calm and calculating. They saw the photos on his wall, the cold evaluation of human beings like they were prey animals. On the 6th day of deliberation, they came back with a verdict. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder for Rebecca Hale. Kidnapping and attempted murder for Claire. And as the investigation continued, additional charges for 2 other victims whose remains had been found using information from Garrett's journals. The judge showed no mercy during sentencing. Life without parole. Multiple consecutive sentences. Garrett would never see freedom again. He'd spend the rest of his days in a concrete cell, his wilderness skills useless, his control stripped away. When given a chance to speak, Garrett stood and looked directly at Maria, who'd attended every day of the trial. "You want to know what Rebecca's last words were?" Maria's lawyer tried to stop him, but Maria held up her hand. She wanted to hear it. Needed to. Garrett's smile was ugly. She said, "You're nothing." Even with her blood on my hands, even knowing she was about to die, she looked at me and said I was nothing. Thought that would hurt me. But here's the truth. I proved her wrong. I'm the one people will remember. Not her. The courtroom erupted. The judge slammed her gavel. But Maria was smiling through her tears. Because she understood what Garrett didn't. Rebecca had been right. He was nothing. A coward who could only feel powerful by hurting people who trusted him. And history would remember him exactly that way. Not as some criminal mastermind. As a pathetic, insecure man who needed to murder innocent women to feel important. After the sentencing, Cassidy met Maria outside the courthouse. They didn't say much. Didn't need to. 5 years of searching. 5 years of wondering. And finally, closure. Not the kind anyone wants, but closure nonetheless. She fought him, Cassidy said quietly. The evidence showed she fought hard. He outweighed her by 70 pounds and she still managed to hurt him. Your sister was brave until the very end. Maria nodded, wiping her eyes. She would have hated being called a victim. She'd want people to know she didn't go quietly. Then that's what will make sure they know. The case closed officially 3 weeks later. The FBI continued investigating other potential victims, but Garrett stopped cooperating. He'd gotten his moment in court and now he had nothing left to say. He sits in prison today in a cell with no windows, no view of the mountains he once used as his hunting ground. Reports from the prison say he doesn't interact with other inmates. Doesn't participate in programs. Just sits and stares at walls. The wilderness guide who thought he was superior to everyone, reduced to counting hours in a box. Meanwhile, Rebecca's story lived on in a different way. Maria started a foundation in her sister's name, focused on wilderness safety and supporting families of missing persons. She worked with hiking organizations to improve trail marker systems and emergency communication protocols. She turned her grief into purpose. And every year on the anniversary of Rebecca's disappearance, Maria hikes a portion of Devil's Ridge Trail. Not the part where Rebecca died. A different section. One with clear trails and beautiful views. She goes with a group now, other families who've lost loved ones to violence. They hike together. Remember together. And they make sure that people like Rebecca aren't reduced to cautionary tales or statistics. They were human beings. Daughters. Sisters. Friends. They had dreams and fears and favorite songs and inside jokes. They mattered beyond how they died. The note that Garrett pinned to Rebecca's chest, that taunting message about stopping the search too soon, it's kept in evidence. Cassidy requested it never be destroyed. Not as a trophy for Garrett, but as a reminder. A reminder that evil relies on people giving up. On investigations going cold. On families losing hope. And that persistence, even when it takes 5 years, even when it seems impossible, can still win. Claire, the woman Cassidy saved, she testified at victim impact hearings. Talked about the 16 days she spent as Garrett's captive. The mind games. The terror. But also about the moment she saw Cassidy step out from behind those rocks. The moment she realized she was going to survive. She said something during her testimony that stayed with everyone in that courtroom. Garrett told me that I was weak. That I'd failed some test he'd created in his head. But sitting here now, watching him in chains, I realize he was the one who failed. He failed to break me. Failed to make me believe his lies. And failed to understand that strength isn't about dominating others. It's about surviving people like him and choosing to keep living anyway. She rebuilt her life. Went back to school. Became an advocate for violent crime survivors. Turned the worst experience of her life into fuel for helping others. Garrett had wanted to destroy her. Instead, he created someone who'd spend the rest of her life undoing the damage people like him cause. That's the real ending to this story. Not Garrett sitting in prison. But the people who survived him, who refused to let him win, who took the worst moments of their lives and forged something meaningful from the wreckage. Rebecca didn't get that chance. She didn't get to survive or rebuild or fight back in any way except those final moments when she told her killer exactly what he was. Nothing. But her death wasn't meaningless. It exposed a predator, saved future victims, and created a community of people committed to making sure others didn't suffer the same fate. The mountains don't care who you are. They're still dangerous, still beautiful, still indifferent to human suffering. But the people who hike them, who love them, who understand both their majesty and their menace, they care. They look out for each other now. They report suspicious behavior. They take the threat seriously. And when someone goes missing, they don't stop looking. Not after 3 weeks. Not after 5 years. They keep searching until they find answers. Because that's what Garrett Boone counted on. People giving up. Getting tired. Moving on. And the greatest victory against someone like him is proving that we won't. That every victim matters. That every family deserves truth. That justice might be slow, but it's relentless. Cassidy Vega retired from the police force 2 years ago. She consults on cold cases now, helps other departments with missing persons investigations. She keeps a photo on her desk. Rebecca Hale. Smiling in hiking gear. A reminder of why the work matters. Maria visits Rebecca's grave every month. Brings flowers. Talks to her sister like she's still there. Tells her about the foundation. About the lives they've helped. About how Rebecca's fight, even in her final moments, inspired so many others to keep fighting too. And somewhere in a maximum security prison, Garrett Boone sits alone with the knowledge that everything he did to feel powerful, to feel significant, backfired completely. He's not feared. He's pitted. Not respected. Despised. Not remembered as some twisted genius. Just another coward with a body count. Rebecca won. Not by surviving, but by being exactly who she was until the very end. Strong. Defiant. Unbreakable in the ways that actually matter. Her last words to Garrett, calling him nothing, they were the truth. And truth has a way of echoing long after lies fade away. If you believe that people like Rebecca Hale deserve to be remembered for who they were, not just how they died, and if you believe that monsters like Garrett Boone deserve nothing but contempt and a forgotten name in a prison record, then share this story. Let people know that evil doesn't get the last word. Survivors do. Families do. Justice does. And if you stand against people like Garrett, if you refuse to let fear win, then make sure you're subscribed because these stories need to be told. The victims need to be remembered. And the predators need to know that we're watching, we're remembering, and we will never stop fighting for justice. Rebecca Hale went into those mountains looking for peace. She found a monster instead. But that monster is caged now. Powerless. Forgotten except as a warning. And Rebecca, she's remembered as a fighter. A sister. A woman who loved the wilderness and refused to let even death steal her dignity. That's how this story ends. Not with Garrett's note, but with Rebecca's truth. You're nothing. And he was. He is. He always will be. While she, and every victim like her, will always be everything he could never destroy. Their strength. Their memory. Their refusal to be erased. That's the legacy. That's what survives. And that's what wins.